Empires once ruled through armies, borders, and force, but Britain discovered a quieter method. It learned that whoever writes the rules eventually controls outcomes, without appearing violent. Law became Britain's most exportable weapon, travelling faster than ships or soldiers ever could. And unlike armies, law stayed long after flags were lowered. British law did not spread through conquest alone, but through voluntary adoption by traders. Merchants preferred predictable rules over arbitrary authority in distant lands. They wanted contracts enforced consistently, regardless of politics or personalities. Britain offered certainty when others offered power. Early global trade revealed a dangerous truth about commerce across borders. Trust failed easily when legal systems clashed or changed suddenly. Disputes destroyed profits faster than storms or piracy. Britain stepped into that fear with structure. English common law evolved around precedent rather than ideology or decree. Past decisions guided future ones, creating memory inside the system. Memory reduced uncertainty for long-term agreements. Stability attracted capital instinctively. Merchants began writing contracts under English jurisdiction, even when trading elsewhere. They chose British courts as neutral arbiters between foreign parties. Location mattered less than enforcement. Britain separated law from geography. This separation transformed London into a legal clearinghouse for global trade. Disputes returned to Britain even when goods never touched British soil. Judgment travelled by paper, not ships. Authority followed judgment. Insurance, shipping, and finance aligned naturally with British legal dominance. Policies referenced English law as default language. Risk became calculable once rules were trusted. Trust multiplied transactions. Colonial expansion accelerated this legal export dramatically. British administrators installed familiar legal frameworks across territories. Local commerce adapted to British rules for survival. Law replaced negotiation. Even after empire retreated, the legal systems remained stubbornly intact. Independent nations kept English law for stability and continuity. Changing law risked chaos. Britain's influence persisted quietly. Financial contracts preferred English law because it limited political interference. Governments struggled to rewrite private agreements governed externally. Sovereignty bent before predictability. Britain protected investors indirectly. As global finance expanded, complexity increased faster than regulation. English law handled complexity through layered precedent. Flexibility without unpredictability became its strength. Others struggled to match this balance. Banks structured derivatives, loans, and guarantees under British jurisdiction intentionally. Disputes defaulted to London courts automatically. Control hid inside clauses. Britain mastered clauses. Legal language itself became standardized around British interpretation globally. Words carried meanings shaped by centuries of precedent. Translation faded. British logic dominated. Corporations headquartered nowhere relied on British law everywhere. Stateless capital needed stable language. Law became shelter. Britain provided shelter. Even rivals accepted British legal authority reluctantly. Alternatives lacked credibility during disputes. Markets chose certainty over nationalism. Britain benefited. Law firms exported British thinking worldwide, training judges and regulators quietly. Local systems mirrored British logic over time. Influence compounded invisibly. Authority multiplied. By the time nations questioned this dominance, reversal felt impossible. Entire financial systems depended on British legal infrastructure. Exit risked collapse. Britain held leverage. The legal advantage did not announce itself loudly. It embedded itself contract by contract, clause by clause. Power accumulated silently. Resistance arrived too late. This was not accidental empire. It was designed through patience. Britain understood something fundamental. Rules outlive rulers. And once the world speaks your legal language, it begins thinking inside your system automatically. As British law spread, global finance gradually aligned itself around English legal interpretation unconsciously. Contracts everywhere began assuming British definitions of risk, obligation, default, and enforcement. This alignment reduced friction between markets, but increased dependence on British judicial authority. Law became infrastructure rather than choice. International disputes increasingly returned to London courts for resolution and legitimacy. Even when outcomes disappointed, consistency reassured markets long-term. Predictability mattered more than fairness in high finance. Britain understood this hierarchy. Financial innovation accelerated because English law absorbed complexity without sudden reinvention. New instruments layered onto existing precedent rather than replacing it. Continuity allowed experimentation without systemic fear. Britain encouraged controlled innovation. Sovereign states discovered limitations when contracts escaped domestic jurisdiction deliberately. Debt agreements governed abroad constrained political responses during crises. Law neutralized sovereignty subtly. Britain facilitated restraint. Global banks preferred British law because it resisted emotional political interference. Courts prioritized contract sanctity over public pressure. Capital felt protected. Protection attracted volume. Legal certainty enabled massive growth in derivatives, insurance, and cross-border lending. Risk could be priced confidently when enforcement felt reliable. Britain monetized certainty repeatedly. Certainty became commodity. Former colonies retained British legal frameworks to signal stability to investors. Markets rewarded familiarity rather than originality. Change appeared risky. Britain benefited post-empire. International arbitration adopted English legal language, even outside Britain's borders. Judges trained in British tradition shaped outcomes globally. Authority dispersed, but logic remained. Britain multiplied influence. Corporations structured entire empires of subsidiaries under British legal umbrellas. Ownership became abstract, protected by clauses and jurisdictions. Power hid in paperwork. Britain mastered paperwork. When crisis struck, British courts enforced contracts even under extreme pressure. This rigidity preserved long-term trust despite short-term pain. Markets remembered discipline. Britain reinforced reputation. Critics argued this system privileged capital over society and democracy. Yet markets rewarded legal discipline relentlessly. Morality lost against predictability. Britain chose predictability. Over time, global finance internalized British legal assumptions as default reality. Questioning them felt impractical rather than ideological. Law became invisible. Invisibility protected dominance. The legal advantage endured because it avoided spectacle and confrontation. No declarations, no force, no flags. Just contracts. Britain preferred contracts. By the time alternatives emerged, integration costs felt prohibitive. Systems spoke British law fluently. Realigning seemed dangerous. Britain remained central. This legal empire required no armies, only acceptance. Acceptance grew through repetition and crisis. Belief hardened. Britain waited. In the modern world, power often belongs to whoever defines rules quietly. Britain did not shout authority. It wrote it, and others signed. If this story changed how you see law, money, and invisible power shaping lives today, remember, the strongest empires speak softly through rules, rather than force or spectacle. Subscribe for more untold histories where contracts quietly govern the world. Because the next decision binding you may already be written elsewhere.